is the 20th day of Menachem Av, and I'm currently in the beautiful shul in Richmond, Virginia, as we are driving home from camp. And they're davening at 6:30, so we might have to end a little bit short this morning and catch up a little bit more tomorrow. We are at the bottom of Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis, the very last line. The Gemara tells us, Tanya Abishol Omer. Abishol tells us that there were two cows that were plowing on Har Zeisim, that's Har Mishcha, the mount of olive oil. So for as long as those two cows were plowing, everybody would eat the chametz. One of them was taken away. They let it off the mountain, and then everybody stopped eating the chametz. And they wouldn't eat and they wouldn't burn the chametz. Once the second one was taken away, and then everybody would begin burning the chametz. And now we get to the Mishnah, the famous, or maybe infamous Mishnah of Rabbi Chanina Skana Kahanim, which is infamous. As it is known as some of the hardest sugyas in all of Shas. Not hard because they are necessarily challenging, but hard because they are areas of halacha that we are not super familiar with. And this is going to be the next 7 or so blat. So the next 2 weeks, we are going to be diving into the sugya of Rabbi Chanina Skana Kahanim, which is about the longest and most complete sugyas in Shas. They deal with taras. We don't have really any gemaras that deal with Seder taras, except for these 7 blat here and a few blat in Maseches Chagiga. So this is a treat. Don't be afraid of it. This is a good opportunity to get our ideas in, to get our knowledge up for Seder taras. So I encourage and invite everybody to attempt to do our best to understand these sugyas to their fullest. Says the Mishnah as follows. Rabbi Chanina Skana Kahanim. Rabbi Chanina was the deputy. He was second in command of the Kahanim, assistant to the Kahanim. So he would say, Rabbi Chanina Skana Kahanim Omer, Mimem Shel Kahanim, from the days of the Kahanim, Lo Nimnum Lisref Es Abaso Shenitma Bivlad Hatuma. They did not hold themselves back from burning the meat of a karban that became tamei through as a vlad hatuma. Vlad hatuma means something that is a secondary tumah, meaning it didn't become tamei itself. It became tamei as a result of coming in contact with something that was itself tamei. So that's called a vlad hatuma. They didn't hold themselves back from burning something that was tamei with a vlad hatuma. It was something that became tamei through an av hatuma. What's an av hatuma? So an av hatuma is something that is a primary source of tumah. Of course, the avi avos tumah is a dead body. But then you have something that's called an avatumah. An avatumah, for example, like a sheretz, that dead creepy crawly, that's called an avatumah. And says the Mishnah, says Rabbi Chanina Skana Kahanim, that they would burn something that was an avatumah, something that became tamei with an avatuma, that would make it into what's called a rishon batuma, a first degree contact of tuma. This is where all the halachas of COVID came from, right? First degree of contact with a vlad tuma, something that is subsequent to that. Even though when you put meat that is an avatuma next to meat that is a vlad tuma, those two things are going to touch each other, and you are going to increase the tuma to the thing that is less tamei. Meaning that there should be a concern of making the basar more tamei. Says Rabbi Chanina Skana Kahanim, we were never concerned for that. We burnt when the karbanos that had to be burnt because they were tamei. We didn't care what level of tumah it was. We would burn the av, something that became tamei with an av tumah that came in contact with a sheretz, or something that came in contact with a rishon tumah, it seems, or a vlad tumah, a second degree of tumah. Even though those two things would touch each other, and it would be mosif tuma al tamasa, it would be increasing the level of tuma. Alpha bishim mosif tuma al tamasa. Rabbi Akiva adds to this halacha. He added on to the din of Rabbi Chanina Skana Kahanim v'Omer, and he said, "Mimem shel Kahanim, from the days of the Kahanim, lo nimnu milahadlik as Hashemen shenifsal b'tvu yom b'ner shenidva b'tmei." They did not hold themselves back from lighting shemen, oil, that became possible through a tvul yom. What's a tvul yom? A tvul yom is somebody that's tamei, and then he went to the mikveh, and then he is done almost everything, but now he is waiting for nightfall in order to be fully tahor, to be fully pure. Rashi points out, and he has the din of a shlishi. He's considered to be a shlishi betuma. Says Rashi, the tvul yom posel es a truma. Meaning he's going to, if he were to touch truma, he would invalidate that truma. It would become truma psula. So the tvul yom would be able to make shemen, would be able to make oil apostle. And they didn't hold themselves back, says Rabbi Akiva, from burning this oil that was possible with a tvul yom. Ner in a ner. Ner doesn't mean candle, as we pointed out before. Ner means a lamp, like the genie of the lamp. Shenitma bit me mace, that became tummy as a result of coming in contact with a dead body, which would make this, it would seem, a avhatuma, because a mace is avi avos hatuma, and the ner then would be an avhatuma. Aval pi, even though shemasivin tuma, al tuma, so even though it's going to increase the tuma on the tuma that was already there. Amr Meir says Meir midivrehem, from their words, meaning from what we've just learned from Rabbi Chanina's Kana Kahanim and from Rabbi Akiva. Lamad, we've learned shesarfin truma tahara im hatmea, that we are allowed to burn the truma tahara with the truma tamea bepesach on Erev Pesach, and this is Rashi says, and this is the tie-in. Why is this whole sugi here? Because of this din, because we mentioned from the din of the previous Mishnah that they would burn all of the chametz on Erev Pesach, and they would burn the truma tahara with the truma tamei without being concerned that you were going to make the truma that was tahar into truma that is tamei, because you're burning it anyway, because you have to get rid of it because it is Erev Pesach. Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi, no, that's not correct. That we can't deduce one of these dinim from the other. Why? Umaydim Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua hold shesarfin zula atzma v'zula atzma, that you burn them separately. Who says that you burn them all together? That's not true. Aman nechlaku, what are they arguing about? Al hatluya, the machlokus is about the tluya, about truma that is suffik. Suffik truma, you don't know if it is tar or if it is tameh. So the machlokas is: do you burn the truma tluya, truma that is talui? I mean, you don't know if it's tameh or tar. That's what the machlokas is. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Zula atzma, zula atzma." You have to burn them separately. You cannot be moisev tumal tumas. Rabbi Yeshua says shten ka'achas, that you burn all of these things together, meaning that you're allowed to burn the truma tmeya with the truma tluya, even though that's a suffix, even though that is a suffix. So says the Gemara as follows: Michti. Let's see. Now, this is going to require a little bit of calculations with regards to the way that we understand the halachas of Rishon and of Avatuma and Rishon Atuma. Says the Gemara Michti, let's see. Basar shenitma bevlad hatuma, something that became tamei with a vlad hatuma, that's a second degree of tuma, meaning it was an avatuma, came along, touched this meat, sheretz came and touched this meat. Now this is now it's a vlad hatuma. So my have. So what? So you have something. Sorry, basar shenitma bevlad hatuma. So you have basar that became tamei with a vlad hatuma, with something that was a rishon hatuma. So you have the number one would be the av hatuma, make something a rishon hatuma. So you have a sheretz that fell into a pan, and then the korban, the meat of the korban, was put into that pan. So now you have avatuma, rishon hatuma, and vlad. That's the sheni to my have. What's the problem? What's the halacha of this thing? This is called a sheni. This would now be a sheni hatuma, because you have the avatuma, that's the sheretz. You have the rishon hatuma, that's the pan, and the sheni hatuma, that is the basar. Says the Gemara, Ki sarifle, when you burn this, bahadi basar shenitma ba'avatuma, with the meat that became tamei with the is now an avatuma, my have. What would happen to this other piece of meat? Says the Gemara, sheni. It would become a sheni. Means you have basar, that you have a sheretz that touched the basar, and this basar is touching the other basar. But that would just make it a sheni. But it is already a sheni. Says the Gemara, sheni v'shenihu. What's the problem? It is a sheni, and it's making a sheni, meaning its status isn't going to change at all. Ma mosef le'tumah al tamasa ika. How do you say that this is, even though it's Mosif Tuma al Tamasa, it's adding Tuma to the Tuma? That doesn't make any sense. It's not adding Tuma to the Tuma. It is as Tameh as it's going to become. It's a sheni l'tuma, and the meat of the korban that became tamei, that is original tuma, is only going to make it into a sheni, but it is a sheni. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda, hacha bevlad vevlad askina. No. We're not talking about a vlad tuma that's a sheni. We're talking about a vlad de vlad, which means a shlishi l'tuma. You have a shlishi l'tuma, which is also called a vlad, meaning vlad just means a derivative of, from the word yeled, right? Vlad means a derivative from. It is a tolda of a higher level of tumah. It could be all the way downstream as far as it goes, and we'll see how far it goes in the next couple of amudim and dapim. Says Gemara, hacha bevlad aski. No, we're talking about shlishi l'tumah. The have le shlishi. This is a shlishi kasavar, and Rebbe Chanina's Kanakanim is telling us shlishi mutal asas sheni. The shlishi you are allowed to turn into a sheni. There's no problem. You can make a shlishi into a sheni. Now the Gemara is going to ask a fundamental question with regards to the way that Tumas Oichlin works. It says, "V'ha ein oichel metame oichel." Yeah, but food cannot make food tame. That's an impossibility. Food cannot make food tame. If two pieces of meat touch each other, so the tumah isn't going to transfer from one to the other. The Tanya yochel yehe oichel metame oichel. Maybe you would think that you have a brisa that says maybe you would think that food could make other food tamei. Talmud Laimar. Therefore, the pasuk tells us v'chiyitin maim al zera v'nafal minivlasam alav tamei hu. When you put water al zera on a seed, v'nafal minivlasam alav, and then a nevela, which is an av ha'tuma, falls on top of it, right? A carcass of an animal that was not shechted appropriately is called a nevela. It died of any other cause. That's called a nevela. That is an avatuma. So tamei hu, it becomes tamei, meaning the seed that has become wet is now able to be mekabel tuma and becomes tamei. It says the Gemara. It says the Brisa. We learn from this tamei hu tamei. It is tamei vein oisakayetsu by tamei, but it cannot make something else like it tamei. Meaning this food, this seed that is now tamei, cannot make another thing tamei because food cannot make other food tamei. Says the Gemara, this makes good sense for Abaye. Why? Because Abaye is of the opinion that Amar that din of oichel cannot make oichel tame is only true by chulin, by non-consecrated meat, meaning by non-consecrated food, non-kachim. Aval b'truma, with regards to truma ukachim, both truma and kachim, the din is not like that. You can absolutely transfer the truma, the tumah from one food to another food. This all works out well according to Abai. According to Rav Ada bar Abba, Mishmei de Rava Nami. In the name of Rava, this also works out well. Why? That din is true by both chulin and truma. Aval bekachim, meaning he disagrees with Abai with regards to truma. Aval bekachim, he agrees with Abai. It can absolutely make something tame. That is certainly possible. Ella, rather, where's our problem? Yeah, Ravina. According to the approach of Ravina, the Sugya Mishmei de Rav, in the name of Rav, the Amar Mikra Male Dibur Hakasuf. The Torah said this as a blanket rule that oichel cannot be matame other oichel. Loishna chulin, loishna truma, loishna kachim. Doesn't make a difference if it's chulin, if it's truma, if it's kachim. Food cannot make other food tame. So this whole din of Rebbe Chanina's Kanakanim doesn't fit with the way that Rava understands the halachas of tuma and tara. So it says it'll never be able to make the other meat tame. How do you explain this Mishnah according to Ravina? Says the Gemara, according to Ravina, what are we talking about? The ikamashkin bahade basar, that this basar, this meat, is not just food, it's also liquid, meaning it's got juices coming out of it. And then, because once it has liquid coming out of it, the liquid can make food tame. Food cannot make food tame, but liquids can. Says the Gemara, hold up a second. If this is so, that we're saying that there was that even though this you can be Mosif Tuma al Tamasa because this meat is coming in contact with it, the meat that was nitma ba'avatuma. So that's not true. What the Mishnah really is talking about is im habasa umashkin mi ba'ale. You should have said with meat and with the liquid. Meaning you're burying the lead here. It's not. That's not what's going on. It's a question of basar umashkin mibayle. Ella, rather you have to say nehi de'ein oichel matame oichel midaraisa. According to Ravina, you have to agree that oichel is not going to be able to be matame oichel midaraisa in the case of kachim midrabanan mi matame, but it is going to be matame on a level of drabanan and the chiddush Rabbi Chanina Skana Kahanim is that with regards to this situation where you have a din midrabanan to be mosif tumal tamasa, that's where the kula exists. The next line, Hosev Rabbi Akiva Mimem Shel Kahanim Ranim Rahadlik Shaman to be continued in Boca tomorrow, 6:15, and everybody should have a marvelous day. And sorry, we went a little bit quickly today, but it's good to, if you haven't had a chance to re-listen to the shir and then be able to make sure that up to date with everything that is going on with Reb Chanina Skana Kahanim. Have a marvelous day. See you later.